The wind had a sound that morning. Not a whistle, not a howl, but a low moan, as if the sky itself was grieving. Snow blanketed every rooftop in the quiet mountain town of Silver Ridge, Oregon. The roads were buried in white, and so were the hearts of its people. 3 days had passed since Deputy Ethan Monroe and his 9-year-old daughter Mia vanished without a trace. His patrol cruiser had been found abandoned on the outskirts of town, its doors locked, radio silent. No signs of struggle, no tire tracks, no witnesses. Just a cold trail and growing fear. Flyers were taped to lampposts. Volunteers scoured the woods. The sheriff's department ran on adrenaline and dead ends, and still nothing. Hope, once loud and defiant, was growing quieter. But that morning, through the stillness, something moved. A figure, low to the ground, limping slightly, ribs visible beneath a battered coat of fur, padded across the tree line. A German shepherd, face streaked with old scars, eyes sharp with something more than hunger. He didn't have a collar, he didn't have a home, but he moved with purpose, not panic. His name, once etched into a brass tag, had long since been forgotten by the world. But somewhere in the back of his mind, it still echoed. Rex. He was no longer anyone's dog, not officially, not for a long time, but something in the frozen wind called to him. A scent, a memory, an instinct older than fear. He turned his head toward the town, toward a cry the rest of the world couldn't hear, and he walked. Rex moved like smoke through the back streets of Silver Ridge, unseen, unspeaking, but never lost. His paws left shallow impressions in the snow, and though his breath came hard from the cold, he pressed on with quiet determination. He didn't look like much anymore. One of his back legs bore a limp that deepened with every step. His black and tan coat was matted with ice, patches missing from old wounds, but his eyes, deep amber and alert, still held the discipline of who he used to be. 2 years ago, he'd worn a vest. He'd had a badge clipped to his collar, K-9 Unit, Search and Rescue, assigned to Officer Marisa King, a tough, even-tempered cop who used to call him Soldier when no one else was listening. But Marisa died in a fire that swallowed half an apartment complex. Rex had tried to reach her, had clawed at the flames until his paws bled. After the funeral, he slipped his leash and disappeared. Most assumed he'd died in the woods. But this morning, he was very much alive and carrying something. He limped through the alley behind the Silver Ridge Animal Clinic, where the scent of dry kibble lingered from daily feedings. In his mouth, he held a single mud-caked object, a boot. Torn, blood-stained, and clearly used. Dr. Rachel Lane, 28, had just stepped outside with a thermos lid of water and a dish of food. She spotted the shepherd and froze. "Hey, easy boy," she whispered, crouching low. Rex didn't growl. He simply padded forward, dropped the boot at her feet, and looked up. Rachel knelt, eyes locked on the emblem sewn into the leather. Rachel's hands trembled as she turned the boot over in the light. The patch was unmistakable. A silver pine tree above a narrow shield. The insignia of the Silver Ridge Sheriff's Department. She had cleaned enough animal wounds to know what blood looked like, and this wasn't old. She rose to her feet, the boot held tight against her chest. Rex stood motionless in the snow, eyes fixed on her face, not begging, not pleading, just watching. She whispered, "Where did you get this?" But the shepherd had already turned, padding back toward the edge of the trees. He didn't wait for her to follow. Back inside the clinic, Rachel dialed the sheriff's office with fingers that wouldn't stay still. When Sheriff Tom Briggs arrived 20 minutes later, snow clinging to his long brown coat, he took one look at the boot and let out a slow exhale. "This is Ethan's boot," he said. "His name's still inside the lining." Rachel told him about the dog, his limp, his ear scar, his focus. "He wasn't just lost," she said. "He came to me like he needed me to see it." Briggs nodded. "And now he's gone again?" "Back toward the ridge," she replied. "The old lumber compound." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. That place had been empty for over a decade. Locals called it dead ground. No lights, no activity, no reason for anyone to go there. Except now they had one. Riggs lifted the boot in his gloved hand and stared out into the white. Then that's where we're going. Out in the woods, Rex was already halfway back to the warehouse. Below the frozen ground, in a concrete basement, Ethan Monroe and his daughter Mia were still alive and waiting. The basement was bitter cold. The kind of cold that didn't just numb your skin but settled in your chest like grief. Ethan Monroe sat slumped in a wooden chair, arms yanked tight behind his back, wrists rubbed raw by the rope. A filthy cloth wrapped across his eyes, tied too tight, soaked with breath and sweat. But worse than the ache in his limbs or the throbbing in his ribs was what he knew. Just inches away on the concrete floor, his daughter lay motionless. Mia. She was bound like him, hands wrenched behind her back, ankles tied, and a blindfold cutting across her small face. Her breathing was thin and shallow, like she was trying not to make a sound. "Mia," Ethan croaked, forcing air through cracked lips. "I'm right here, baby." A pause. Then weakly, "Daddy?" Her voice was barely there, hoarse, dry, afraid. Ethan fought the ropes, knowing it was useless. "I'm here. I've got you." They hadn't eaten in over a day, maybe 2. Time blurred in the dark. The food Victor gave them was barely enough to survive. Scraps of bread, water that tasted like rust. Mia had stopped speaking for long stretches. Her head rested limply against the cold wall. And Ethan? He was starting to drift in and out, his thoughts fractured, his strength fading fast. But every time he heard her exhale, every tiny breath, he held on. Victor Hale, their captor, hadn't come down in hours. When he did, he talked to himself more than to them. "You all forgot me, forgot what I gave, what I was. Now you'll feel what it's like to disappear." Outside, the wind was brutal, slicing through the pine trees. But Rex was still moving. The scent was clearer now. Ethan's sweat, rope, fear, and something else, faint but urgent. A child. His limp had worsened, leaving crimson specks in the snow behind him. But his eyes were sharp, locked forward. Back in town, Rachel Lane zipped her coat and slammed her car door shut. She didn't know exactly where she was going, but her gut told her to follow the trail no one else could see. Somewhere out there, in a snow-covered hell, a dog was doing what no one else could. And Rachel wasn't about to let him do it alone. The basement was silent except for the soft hum of an old bulb swaying from a frayed wire above. Its flickering light cast restless shadows across the concrete walls, long, stretching, uncertain. Outside, in the snow-covered yard behind the warehouse, Rex stood motionless beside a rusted vent. He sniffed once, twice, then pressed his body low to the frozen ground. The air from the vent carried a mixture of fear, blood, and something else. A voice he recognized. A scent that anchored him. With practiced precision, he found a crack near a rotting basement window, just wide enough for a large dog to squeeze through. His injured leg scraped against the frame, drawing fresh blood, but he didn't stop. Inch by inch, Rex forced his way in, head first, shoulders tight, until he dropped soundlessly onto the concrete below. There they were. Ethan blinked hard behind his blindfold. He couldn't tell if he was awake or dreaming anymore. His body was numb from the cold and his legs had gone stiff. The ropes burned his wrists, the skin cracked and swollen. Next to him, Mia hadn't spoken in over an hour. He knew she was still breathing, but it was shallow, fragile. He whispered her name now and then, just to keep her tethered, to keep himself tethered. Then, a sound. Soft, deliberate, too light to be boots. A low whine, a huff of breath. Then the faint click of nails on concrete. Ethan froze. Something warm nudged his knee. "Mia," he whispered, heart thudding. "There's something here." The cloth across his eyes was suddenly pulled. Gently, carefully. Not yanked, but teased loose by teeth. The knot gave way. Light stabbed into Ethan's vision, blurred and ghostly. When his eyes adjusted, he saw him. The shepherd stood close, head low, eyes bright and burning with memory. Mud clung to his paws, and a gash along his hind leg bled slowly, but he held his posture like a soldier reporting for duty. How did you? Ethan's voice cracked. Rex didn't answer. He turned toward Mia and moved behind her, sniffing quickly. Then, as he had done before, he began to gnaw, carefully, at the ropes binding her wrists. Mia stirred. "Daddy?" "It's okay, sweetheart," Ethan whispered, tears welling. "He's here to help." The ropes dropped. Then the blindfold. Mia blinked into the half-light and gasped. At first, she recoiled in confusion. Then her lips parted. She stared at the dog, wide-eyed, as if seeing something out of a storybook. Her voice trembled with awe. "A dog?" "No," Ethan said, a shaky smile breaking through. "That's not just a dog. That's a damn guardian angel." And just then, above them, floorboards creaked. The floorboards groaned again, heavier this time, a slow, deliberate creak followed by another, the sound of someone walking with purpose. Victor Hale was coming. Ethan sat up straighter, shielding Mia with his shoulder the best he could. His arms were still bound behind his back, but he leaned forward slightly, instinctively putting himself between her and the door. Rex didn't move from his crouch. His body lowered further, ears flat, muscles tight beneath his patchy coat, his eyes locked on the wooden staircase. A key turned in the lock. The basement door creaked open. Victor stepped into the doorway, a heavy flashlight in one hand, the beam slicing through the dimness. The other hand rested near a worn leather pouch on his belt. He stopped at the top step and stared down at the scene below. Ethan, Mia, and the dog. "What the hell?" Victor's voice was low, filled with disbelief. "You again?" Rex didn't growl. Not yet. He stood still, like a wire pulled tight. Victor took one cautious step down. "I saw you. Thought I did. Last night. You followed me, didn't you?" His voice cracked, rage seeping through. He descended slowly. "You brought someone, huh? Ha-ha? Mutt? Someone out there with a badge?" Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. "Don't touch her," he warned, voice hoarse. Victor ignored him. His hand moved toward his belt. That's when Rex barked. Once, loud, sharp, commanding. The sound slammed through the basement like a gunshot. Outside, it echoed into the forest. Flashlights flickered behind the broken windows. Voices shouted, "Police! Hands where we can see them!" Victor spun, panicked. He lunged toward Mia, reaching blindly, but Rex was faster. He launched from the ground like a shadow with teeth, hitting Victor square in the chest. They went down hard. Victor's scream was cut short by the force of the impact. Rex stood over him, chest heaving, teeth bared, legs wide in a guarding stance. His eyes burned with instinct and fury, every muscle daring Victor to move again. And upstairs boots thundered down the steps. Help had come. The basement door burst open, the sound of boots pounding concrete slicing through the tension. Flashlights carved beams of light across the room. "Sheriff's Department, drop your weapon!" But Victor was already on the floor, groaning beneath the weight of Rex, whose teeth hovered just inches from his throat. Sergeant Claire Dalton and Deputy Aaron Leach rushed forward. One cuffed Victor's arms behind his back, while the other rushed toward Ethan. Ethan leaned heavily against the chair, breath ragged, still trying to shield Mia with his bound body. "We've got you," Claire said, kneeling beside him. "You're safe now." Ethan nodded, blinking through the dizziness. "My daughter." Rachel Lane appeared in the doorway seconds later, her breath visible in the frigid air. She spotted Mia, trembling on the ground, and dropped beside her with practiced gentleness. "She's cold," Rachel said softly, "but breathing." Rex didn't move from his place. Even as Victor was dragged across the floor in cuffs, even as the room filled with people, Rex remained planted, still standing over Ethan and Mia like a shield that had no orders to stand down. "Easy, boy," Sheriff Briggs said, stepping in behind the others. "You did it." Ethan looked up, voice cracked with gratitude. "He saved us." Rex finally turned, stepping closer to Mia, and nudged her gently with his nose. The girl, eyes dazed and red, reached a trembling hand to his fur. She gripped it weakly, not out of fear but as if holding onto something solid, something real. In the cold, forgotten basement where darkness had ruled for days, a warmth now spread, not from the light, but from the dog who had never given up. Hours later, under fluorescent lights and clean white sheets, that same warmth remained, curled at the side of a hospital bed in room 214, where Mia Monroe lay beneath a thick cotton blanket, her small body dwarfed by the hospital bed. She was stable now, warm, fed, but her eyes were still distant, blinking slowly at the ceiling as if her mind hadn't yet left that basement floor. In the chair beside her, Rex sat upright, unmoving, unwavering. He had followed the ambulance, no leash, no command, just quiet, determined steps across the snow-covered parking lot, up the stairs and down the hallway like he knew exactly where to go. The nurses had tried to stop him at first, but when they saw the girl's fingers reach blindly for him as she was wheeled in, and the way her heart monitor steadied the moment his head touched the mattress, they let him stay. Now, hours later, he hadn't left her side, not once. Every time Mia stirred, her hand drifted toward his fur. Every time she winced or whimpered in her sleep, Rex laid his chin beside her pillow and watched her face, as if guarding her from dreams. Ethan, seated across the room with his arm in a sling and bruises blooming along his jaw, could hardly speak when he looked at them. He'd always believed in loyalty, the kind that ran through the badge, through the job, through sacrifice. But what he saw now wasn't duty. It was something deeper, something ancient, something that didn't need words. No one could explain it. Why a dog that had never seen this girl before would treat her like family, like something sacred. But then again, maybe they didn't need to explain it, because anyone who looked at them could see it clearly. Between Mia and Rex, there was a bond, invisible, unspoken, and profoundly sacred. A week later, the snow had stopped falling, but the town of Silver Ridge still shimmered in white. Along the front lawn of the sheriff's office, folding chairs lined the grass beneath a pale winter sun. Locals gathered in coats and scarves, shopkeepers, school teachers, retirees, kids with mittened hands, all silent, all watching. At the center of the platform stood a new kind of badge, not a silver star, not a deputy's shield, but a collar tag, engraved with one simple phrase, Rex, Silver Ridge Sentinel. Sheriff Tom Briggs stepped forward with the small velvet box in hand. His voice was rough but steady. "Some heroes don't wear a uniform," he said. "Some don't speak at all, but they hear what we miss. They go where we can't, and they protect what matters." Then he turned toward Rex, who stood at attention beside Ethan Monroe, his coat brushed, his stance proud. Ethan, dressed in his full uniform for the first time since the rescue, bent down slowly. His left arm still carried the weight of healing, but his hands were steady. He clipped the tag to Rex's collar and whispered, "Will you stay, Rex, and keep guarding what matters most?" Rex let out a soft bark, once, not loud, but steady, as if saying, "I already have." Applause broke out across the field, among the crowd. Rachel Lane stood quietly near the back, hands tucked into her coat. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. She had known all along. In the front row, Mia smiled wide, her cheeks still pale but her eyes bright. She clutched a drawing in her hands, stick figures of a man, a girl, and a big-eared German shepherd. Above them, in shaky pink crayon, "My Family." Later that night, Rex lay curled at the foot of her bed, head resting on his paws. He didn't need to patrol the streets or chase criminals. He was where he belonged now. Home. The blizzard howled through the desolate highway, turning the world into an endless swirl of white and gray. The wind screeched through the skeletal trees lining the roadside, and the snow piled higher with every passing minute. Daniel Hayes tightened his grip on the steering wheel of his semi-truck, his knuckles pale against the black leather. The rhythmic hum of the engine was the only sound grounding him in the storm, his eyes locked on the barely visible road ahead. The radio crackled through the static, a lifeless voice listing off the grim reality. Severe blizzard warning in effect. Visibility near zero. Wind chill reaching -25. Residents are advised to stay indoors. Daniel exhaled sharply and turned the radio off. He didn't need a warning. He already knew how brutal the storm was. He had spent years driving through every kind of weather imaginable, but something about this night unsettled him. Maybe it was the way the cold seemed to seep into his bones despite the heater blasting at full force. Or maybe it was the way the wind screamed like a warning through the dark. Then he saw it. A lone figure in the storm. Barely there, barely moving. Daniel squinted through the swirling snow. At first it seemed like nothing, just another illusion cast by the wind. Then it stumbled. And everything changed. His foot eased off the gas. His instincts flared to life. Something was wrong. Cursing under his breath, Daniel pulled to the shoulder, tires crunching over packed ice. He grabbed his coat, bracing himself for the cold, and stepped out into the storm. He wasn't prepared for what he found. The cold slammed into Daniel Hayes like a wall of knives, stealing the breath straight from his lungs. Even through his thick winter coat, the wind sliced through him like it was trying to push him back. He gritted his teeth and forced himself forward, each step a battle against the knee-deep snow. As he neared the figure, his stomach twisted. It wasn't just some lost traveler. It was a boy, no older than 8, curled into himself, shaking violently. Daniel dropped to one knee, his gloved hands reaching out. "Hey, kid! Hey, can you hear me?" His voice was nearly swallowed by the storm, but the boy stirred weakly. That was when Daniel noticed something else. A shape in the snow, large, still. His breath caught as he realized he wasn't just looking at the boy's shadow. It was a dog. Beside the boy lay a massive German shepherd, its body partially buried in the snow. Its fur was stiff with ice, its breathing shallow. But despite its near-frozen state, it hadn't moved from its spot. It had been shielding the boy with its body. The dog's eyes flickered open, weak but alert, and Daniel saw something in them: determination, defiance, a silent plea. Daniel quickly shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around the boy. "Come on, kid, stay with me," he murmured, lifting the child into his arms. The boy was light, too light. He wasn't just cold, he was near the edge of hypothermia. Daniel turned to the dog. "Come on, buddy, up." The shepherd tried, its legs trembling violently beneath it. It took one step, then collapsed. "Damn it," Daniel cursed, his mind racing. He couldn't carry them both, and there was no way the dog could walk in this condition. But leaving it behind wasn't an option. Adjusting his grip on the boy, Daniel bent down, hooked his free arm under the shepherd's chest, and heaved. The dog let out a weak whimper but didn't resist as Daniel lifted it into his arms alongside the boy. His muscles screamed under the weight, but he forced himself forward. Step by step, he pushed against the storm, his boots crunching through the snow. The truck wasn't far, but with the weight of both bodies in his arms, it felt like miles. His legs burned. His breath came in ragged gasps. "Don't you dare stop, Hayes." Finally, the truck loomed ahead, its headlights barely visible through the storm. Summoning the last of his strength, Daniel reached the door, yanked it open, and gently placed both the boy and the dog onto the passenger seat. He slammed the door shut against the howling wind, hands trembling as he turned to look at them. The shepherd didn't move, and the boy's eyes remained closed. Daniel's heart pounded. Had he been too late? Daniel pressed 2 fingers against the boy's neck, a pulse, weak but steady. His chest loosened slightly. The kid was alive, but Rex wasn't moving. Daniel's gaze flicked between them. The shepherd's body was unnaturally still, his fur stiff with ice. His instinct screamed at him to check, to do something, but the boy had to come first. He pulled a blanket from the back seat and wrapped it around the kid, tucking it tightly. "Hey, buddy, can you hear me?" The boy didn't respond. His lips were a dangerous shade of blue. Daniel had no choice. He twisted the key in the ignition. The truck groaned but refused to start. No, not now. He pumped the gas, twisted again. The engine roared to life. Without hesitation, he threw the truck into gear and sped toward the nearest hospital. One hand on the wheel, the other fumbling for his phone, he hit the call button. St. Luke's Hospital, Emergency Department. I have a kid, 8 years old, severe hypothermia. Barely responsive. Bring him in. Keep him warm but not too fast. Do you have an ETA? 5 minutes. Daniel hung up and pressed the gas harder. The road was treacherous. Snowdrifts swallowed the shoulders, black ice lurked beneath the tires. Then, the worst happened, black ice. For a terrifying second, the truck lost traction. The back end swung wildly. Daniel gritted his teeth, barely tapping the brakes. The truck skidded toward the embankment. No, no, no! At the last second, the tires caught traction. The truck jerked back onto the road. Daniel exhaled sharply, flicking a glance at the passenger seat. The boy stirred. Then his eyelashes fluttered, his fingers twitched, and finally his eyes cracked open. Daniel nearly laughed in relief. Hey kid, stay with me. Charlie's voice was hoarse. Rex? Daniel's throat tightened. We'll help him, but we need to help you first. The hospital came into view, a bright beacon against the storm. Daniel pulled into the ER entrance, throwing the truck into park. Within seconds, 2 nurses and a doctor rushed out with a stretcher. Daniel quickly lifted Charlie out of the truck. The boy fought weakly, his small hands clutching Daniel's jacket. No, Rex needs help. You need help first, Daniel insisted. But Charlie wasn't listening. His voice was stronger now. Please, I won't go without him. Daniel hesitated. The kid had barely been conscious moments ago, but now pure determination burned in his eyes. Daniel clenched his jaw. All right, kid, we'll get Rex. Daniel didn't waste time. The moment Charlie was in the nurse's hands, he turned back to the truck, where Rex lay unmoving on the passenger seat. The shepherd's fur was stiff with ice, his breath so shallow that for a terrifying second, Daniel thought it had stopped completely. Hang on, buddy, he muttered, carefully lifting the massive dog into his arms. Rex didn't react. As Daniel carried him toward the hospital entrance, hurried footsteps approached. I'll take him! A vet tech in scrubs rushed forward, a stretcher rolling beside him. Daniel hesitated. He needs help. Fast. Severe hypothermia. The tech nodded. We've got a triage area for emergency cases like this. Follow me. Daniel placed Rex on the stretcher, his muscles aching from the weight. The shepherd barely twitched as they wheeled him inside. Behind them, Charlie suddenly broke free from a nurse's grip and ran toward them. Wait, I'm coming too. Daniel turned just in time to see the boy stumbling after them, still wrapped in a hospital blanket. One of the doctors moved to stop him. Charlie, you need to rest. No, Rex needs me. Charlie's voice cracked, but his determination was fierce. Daniel exchanged a look with the doctor. The kid had been unconscious minutes ago, but now, fueled by sheer willpower, he refused to leave his best friend's side. Daniel nodded. Let him come. The doctor hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but stay out of the way. Charlie hurried to Rex's side as they entered the emergency triage area, a sterile, brightly lit room where a small team was already prepping. Dr. Julia Brennan was waiting. She looked up from a medical tray, her sharp blue eyes locking onto Daniel's. Severe hypothermia? He nodded. Barely breathing. Julia wasted no time. Let's work. She moved to Rex's side, her hands swift and precise as she checked his vitals. Heart rate's dangerously low. We need to warm him up, but gradually. Her assistant handed her a warm IV bag, which she placed beneath Rex's abdomen. Start slow fluids, increase room temperature. Charlie clutched Rex's paw, his voice trembling. Is he going to be okay? Julia's face softened slightly, but her tone remained professional. He's strong, kid, but we need time. Minutes passed in agonizing silence. Every shallow breath Rex took felt like a countdown. His body was still too stiff, his heartbeat too slow. Then, suddenly, he spasmed. The monitor beeped erratically. "He's crashing," a nurse shouted. Julia moved instantly. "Start compressions, now." Daniel instinctively reached for Charlie, pulling him back as an assistant began CPR. Charlie's voice broke. "No, please, don't let him die." Julia's movements were fast but controlled, her expression unreadable. Daniel knew this moment too well, the thin, fragile line between life and death. He had seen it before, felt it before. Then, amidst the beeping, a weak, rattling breath escaped from Rex's chest. The monitor's beeping steadied. His heart was still beating. Julia exhaled. "We've got him back." Charlie let out a sob, burying his face into Daniel's side. Daniel rested a steadying hand on the boy's back. "He's still with us, kid." But Rex's fight wasn't over yet. The tension in the room slowly faded, but Rex was far from safe. His breaths were still slow, his body barely reacting to the warmth surrounding him. Dr. Julia Brennan adjusted the IV drip and checked his vitals again. "His temperature is rising, but he's still weak. He needs rest and luck." Charlie sat beside Rex, his small fingers gripping the shepherd's paw tightly. "You're gonna be okay, Rex," he whispered. Daniel stood nearby, watching. The kid had been through hell, but he wasn't focused on himself, only on Rex. Daniel crouched beside him. "Charlie, what were you two doing out there?" Charlie sniffled, his fingers never leaving Rex's paw. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "We didn't mean to be out there that long." Daniel exchanged a glance with Dr. Julia Brennan, then nodded for Charlie to continue. The boy swallowed hard. "Rex and we always go on walks together. It was something we used to do with my dad." His voice faltered, but he pushed on. "Yesterday, I went into the woods just to look around. I wasn't going to be gone long, I swear." Daniel didn't say anything, just listened. He knew what it was like to lose someone, knew how grief could push a person to wander, to search for something that wasn't there anymore. Charlie took a shaky breath. "On my way back, the snow was deeper than before. I stepped wrong and the ground just disappeared under me." Julia frowned. "A snow pocket?" Charlie nodded. "I slid down a slope. I tried to climb back up, but the snow kept breaking under my hands." His grip on Rex tightened. "I yelled, but no one could hear me. No one but Rex." Daniel glanced at the shepherd's still form. Even near death, Rex had never left the boy's side. "Rex came after me," Charlie whispered. "He slid down too. He tried to push me back up the hill, but it was too steep. We had to find another way." Julia's expression was unreadable, but Daniel saw the way her fingers clenched around her clipboard. She knew as well as he did, a child alone in a snowstorm didn't stand a chance. But with a dog like Rex? Charlie's voice grew softer. "We walked for a long time. I don't know how far. But then the wind got worse, and I got so tired." He blinked hard, trying not to cry. "I fell down, and Rex, he laid on top of me, kept me warm." Daniel's throat tightened. That was why Rex was so weak. He had given everything he had to keep the boy alive. Charlie looked up at Daniel. "He saved me. And now, I have to save him." Daniel held the boy's gaze for a long moment. He had no doubt about it. If Rex had the strength to fight, it was because he had someone to fight for. The sterile hum of medical equipment filled the quiet room. Rex's chest rose and fell, slow but steady. Charlie still refused to leave his side. His small fingers tangled in the shepherd's fur. Daniel exhaled and ran a hand over his face. He had seen enough close calls in his life to know that Rex had barely made it. Even with all the care in the world, some dogs just didn't wake up after a fight like this. But Rex was different. He had clung to life the same way he had clung to Charlie in the storm, because letting go simply wasn't an option. Julia finished checking the IV line and straightened. "He's stable now, but his recovery won't be easy. He'll need rest, therapy, a lot of care." She glanced at Charlie. "That means he'll need you too." Charlie nodded without hesitation. "I'll take care of him." Daniel crossed his arms, watching the boy, determined, stubborn, a fighter, just like Rex. Something tugged at his chest, something he hadn't let himself feel in a long time, a sense of belonging. He had spent years keeping people at a distance, choosing solitude over connection. But now, as he looked at Charlie, this kid who had already lost so much but still refused to lose hope, Daniel knew he couldn't just walk away. He crouched beside the boy. "Charlie," he hesitated, then let the words come. "I know you and Rex have been through a lot, and I know home might not feel the same anymore." Charlie's fingers curled in Rex's fur. He didn't speak, but his eyes darkened with something unspoken. Daniel took a breath. "What if you came with me?" Charlie's head snapped up. "What?" "I've got space," Daniel continued. "A house, a yard, plenty of room for Rex to recover. And for you too." He swallowed. "I'm not saying it has to be forever, just if you need somewhere to go, somewhere safe, you and Rex." Charlie blinked. His lip trembled. "You mean it?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I do." For a long moment, Charlie didn't move. Then slowly, he reached out and grabbed Daniel's sleeve. "Okay," he whispered. Daniel felt something settle deep in his chest. Charlie wasn't the only one getting a second chance tonight. A week had passed since the storm. Snow still covered the ground, but inside Daniel's house there was warmth. Not just from the crackling fireplace, but from something deeper. Charlie sat on the floor, his arms wrapped around Rex, whose head rested on his lap. The shepherd was still weak, but his eyes were alert, watching, understanding. Daniel leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. He had spent years keeping people at a distance. But now, looking at Charlie and Rex, two souls who had saved each other, he realized something. Some things are worth holding on to. Charlie glanced up. "Do you think he knows?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Knows what?" Charlie hesitated. "That he has a home now?" Daniel crouched beside them, scratching Rex's ears. "Yeah, kid, I think he knows." Rex let out a quiet sigh, pressing closer to Charlie. A silent promise. For the first time in years, Daniel's house didn't feel empty. Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside, they were home. Some storms take away everything, but sometimes they bring us exactly where we need to be. That night, in the worst of the storm, 3 lost souls had found each other. Because sometimes the ones we save end up saving us. And sometimes they remind us what home truly means.